Welcome back, class. We're going to talk in this segment about the importance of organizational culture and the definition that the authors provide. Organizational culture is the expectations that organizational members share about how to think and act. Pretty straightforward, at least from a definition perspective. Expectations are based on shared assumptions, values, beliefs, um, you know, those kind of, assumptions, values, beliefs kind of define what is important to the organization. And then the norms, more along the lines of um, appropriate attitude, behaviors, and social expectations. So um, they talk in the text a lot about, beliefs and norms. So um, it you can see that, and depending on which companies you worked in, or which companies you are now working in, or which companies that you'd like to climb the corporate ladder, just make sure you understand that the norms and the beliefs and understand the expectations before you jump in with both feet trying to climb that corporate ladder. And they talk, and I think I jotted down page 179. Ed Schein developed some of the methodology that they reference in our text, developed what he calls the iceberg metaphor. And on 179, they've got, like, I guess it's supposed to be the Titanic, kind of puts it along there. And they've got the iceberg drawn. And they've got, kind of at the very bottom, they've got the basic underlying assumptions and beliefs. Again, values, beliefs, define, what is important. It's the unobserved. And then the next rung up is your norms and your values, and they talk about trust in the employees, and based on the norms and values, you want to be a strategic leader that has a group of followers, or a group of associates, or a group of employees, however you want to phrase it, that you can trust to do the right thing, and that you can trust to act appropriately. And then you've got the cultural artifacts, which are above the water there, and it's like symbols and dress codes and language, and we'll get into some of those in a few minutes, especially just the way individuals, behave and act at work. Schein contends that leaders create and manage culture. Leadership is a manipulation of culture. So leaders are creating and managing culture. And then he says leadership is the manipulation of culture. So I think he starts, if I remember correctly, he starts his book out talking about leaders create and manage culture. And I think the author said after like 300 pages, he kind of winds everything up and says, leadership is a manipulation of culture. And that's true. Individuals are going to lead and manipulate the culture of an organization to ensure that it's going to drive that competitive advantage, especially if you're a firm or a company that has equity investors. The expectation is you're generating profits, you're generating value for the firm, and it's your job as the leader to manipulate the culture. And then they talk about norms. Norms are a key aspect of culture. They're talking about employee interactions, talking about dress codes, talking about physical layouts of your building. And I've probably witnessed every layout possible in a building, especially when healthcare is concerned. Sometimes it's gone from just like a cubicle farm, well, with only a few offices scattered around, to a situation where the C-suite, the senior management are up, they're up in the stratosphere on the upper floor of the building, and then the rest of us are down kind of the chickens down, in the bottom floors. And the weird thing to me has always been, and I don't want to say always, but in a lot of health plans, HR is like down at the bottom floors. You would think HR would be up on one of the upper levels, because HR has a significant amount of input in any organization. But for some reason, in the health plans, they're down on the bottom, one of the bottom floors, and I've never really understood that. And I'll talk just a few minutes about dress code. And dress code, it just seems to be a thorn in the side of most leaders, because even though a dress code is specific and very regimented and laid out so anybody should understand it, dress code is one of the things that seems to be violated, or seems to be the thing that I've noticed employees attack more than anything else. If you're thinking about, at least in my work experience on the East Coast, it's more, shirt and tie. Maybe, corporate casual. If you talking about the West Coast, it's more laid back. It's more, like not so much shorts and flip flops at work, but it's a much more casual dress code on the West Coast. And when I worked at HealthNet, we had a lot of DoD contracts for healthcare, and as far as HealthNet was concerned, as long as there weren't visitors in the building, it was fairly laid back and casual in your dress. And you would occasionally get emails that said, so and so from Department of Defense is coming in to visit the building tomorrow. And at that point, everybody wore shirt and tie. But otherwise, it's pretty laid back. And of course, Southern California is pretty laid back anyway. And one thing that HealthNet had to start doing, and it was really weird to me, that you had individuals coming out of with a college degree that evidently didn't know how to dress appropriately when it came to the workplace. And it drove leadership up the wall, even though they were okay with some type of kind of laid back corporate attire. Some of the outfits these kids wore into work that had just graduated, and you would see them. So they're graduating in May, and HealthNet was first job, because there were a lot of entry level healthcare positions there at HealthNet in the office where I worked, and you'd see these individuals come in, and some of them look like they'd just gone to class. I mean, especially some of the guys, they would come in, be wearing a t-shirt and a pair of torn jeans, and the t-shirt's all wrinkled and got smudges on it, and probably just either look like they slept in it. But and the girls were tops too low cut, skirts too short. And what HealthNet finally started doing, as part of the onboarding process and part of the orientation process, they would take one afternoon, and they would have all of the new employees meet them at the mall in San Diego at Nordstrom, and they would provide a fashion show for them. And male and female models, they would come out and they'd say, here's what we expect you to wear when you go to work. And then they would have the models also come out and said, and this is definitely not, we don't ever expect to see this at work. And it helped a lot with these kids just coming out of college to get them in the mindset of what corporate attire was supposed to look like. You still had individuals that tried to push the envelope. They would come to work, and some of the attire wasn't particularly appropriate for work. And we had a nurse that was in charge of I don't know whether HR asked her to be in charge, or she just kind of took control of. She was kind of the fashion police, and she was constantly sending people home to change clothes and come back, and it's been that way everywhere I worked. Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we had a union shop there, so it was really tough with the dress code on the union shop because the individuals in the union were protected by the union, and they were always pushing the limit on what attire could and couldn't be worn at work, and HR constantly adjusting the dress code to ensure that people dressed appropriately. They had dressed, they had codes talking about language and different things, and so it's always been an issue, and kind of like the layout of a building. I've been through, as I said, probably every layout possible in the building because they just keep changing. Norms and they're keys to culture also because of terminology, titles. What do the titles mean? And I've noticed at Fisk, the professors greet each other by, Dr. Smith and Dr. Jones. And most universities that I've ever been associated with, the professors, it was, first name basis. I can remember my major professor in graduate school, Dr. Lee would always do. I'd go and I'd say something with Dr. Lee. He said, Bob, my name is Warren. I expect you to address me as Warren. And I had a little trouble doing it, but after a while, he said, look, any professor, any PhD professor that you have to be addressed that wants everybody to call him doctor, said he's got some inferiority issues. So, but again, it's all the environment that you work in, and it's all based on norms, and it's all based on beliefs. And there are certain companies that you confront the boss. There are certain companies that you don't confront the boss. McKinsey is a consulting firm, and one of theirs, they talk about constructive confrontation. It's an obligation to dissent, and it's an obligation to question in an appropriate manner, but to question the process and the direction of the firm. And I had an individual that came to work for me that had been at McKinsey for a few years, and that individual was always questioning the approach that we were taking, or questioning why we were doing things, and I always liked individuals that would question the way we were doing business, because sometimes they had better ideas than what we were starting down the road with. And I always told my teams that if you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's okay. But if you don't agree, at least bring me some information that better approximates reality so that we can change the approach that we're taking. And so that's all going to be laid out, based on the environment. It's going to be laid out on, within the norms and the beliefs of a given company. They talk about, significant or successful companies, and they talk about, customer service. How many times have you called your customer service line at the bank, and you're on hold for like ever, and when you finally, and they talk about you've been on hold 20 minutes, and they keep, butting in, or they keep getting this recorded message that says, your call is, thanks for your patience. Your call is very important to us. Okay, if my call is very important to you, why aren't you answering my call? Within a lot of health plans on a customer service line, they want that average speed to answer, or ASA. They want it to be 15 seconds or less, and they have them staffed that way. So they may be overstaffed at some times of the day, but that's that's the way they handle customer service. And the text talks about Costco and Nordstrom. You buy something at Nordstrom, at least the last time I bought something in Nordstrom, you took it back. There were no questions asked. You took it. I've seen people take shoes that they wore at Nordstrom that had for like 2 or 3 years, and they take them back. Nordstrom, they take them back, no questions asked. Costco, I can remember in San Diego being in Costco, and some woman right in front of me walked in with like a quarter of a bag of their nacho chips, their dipping chips for guacamole stuff. She walked in and she's in here. Here it is, like a quarter of a bag, and she said, "I'm bringing these back because I didn't like the taste of them." You'd already eaten 3/4 of the bag. What are you bringing back a quarter of a bag for? But the woman at Costco, no questions asked, got her Costco card, scanned it, got the price, gave her money back, no questions asked. And that is the way that Costco and Nordstrom have built their business. Other companies, you try to take something back, and it's like, it's like pulling teeth to get them to take something back. And then the authors ask where to begin with developing culture. Well, the first place you begin at the norms and values can be shaped directly. And again, they comes up with dress code. So dress code must be an issue with a lot of firms when it comes to developing their norms and values. Cultural norms and values can be reinforced by leaders, and you want it to be reinforced by leaders. And norms and values and beliefs are reinforced, and you can either reinforce them with tangible ways, money, promotion, or you can do intangible, like with rewards and pat on the back and different things like that. $10 Visa cards, Starbucks cards. Not a lot of value, but it's recognition, and individuals like recognition. Remember, we talked about, I can't remember which chapter it was, and Mary Kay was famous for rewards and recognitions for her teams. Problem with monetary rewards and promotions, they don't have them every day. In at least the health plans that I've worked for, you have a potential of a cost of living increase or a bump in salary. You have a potential for bonus, and you may have a potential, if you're like Health Net and Aetna and United, for some stock options. Blue Cross Blue Shield, since it's not publicly traded, it was more salary bumps and potential bonuses, but those just don't come along very often, and they are tied to the evaluation process. Whereas you can have like these little, I don't want to say insignificant, but you can have some recognition along the way. And in a lot of the teams I've worked with in the past, once a month, provide them lunch. Most of the budgets I've managed in the past have had a line item in there that says employee relations. And, there was, I don't want to say chump change, but there was some money in there that you could have, provide lunch once a month for the team. Or Panera Bread used to be on Tuesdays, I think, at least in Buffalo. You got like a baker's dozen of bagels, and they were half price, and they would deliver coffee and bagels to the building. So there's just a lot of those little attributes or little recognition approaches that you can use to help drive and to help develop your culture and to get everybody to buy in. And then the authors talk for a few minutes about how norms affect behavior. Work and social settings rely on information from the context and the leaders to guide behavior. especially if it's in a social function. Um, Companies don't want individuals that are going to embarrass them in a social function. They don't want individuals going to embarrass them at work either. Informational influence, informational social influence, or discipline norms, uh, just like, no one wears a tie or everybody wears a tie. Then you've got normative social influence, or they call it injunctive norms, approval of disapproval for behavior in a certain way. And it's, you'll find that you don't want to be an individual in an organization that doesn't understand the norms and the beliefs or the values, because you'll almost be in a situation where you're viewed as a pariah in the company. They've talked about in the text a couple of times about, being socially outcast, or could be physically outcast from a company. Descriptive and injunctive norms are powerful determinants of how people in an organization behave. Again, organizations are trying to develop the norms, trying to develop the beliefs and the values to help their employees understand how not only to behave in a work setting, but how do you behave in a social setting. And there were guys in Buffalo that they'd go to sleep at their desk. I mean, and then you'd have to take them aside and talk to them and said, that you can't do that at work. You can't. They're paying you to be productive and to perform, and you can't stay out all night partying and then come in and try to sleep at your desk. And a lot of the individuals just didn't understand that concept. It was like, and I think the workforce is, if you believe what if you believe what I'm seeing on TV, and even in some periodicals that I read, it's getting more and more difficult to manage a workforce, more and more difficult to develop a strong culture in a workforce, because it's almost like the workforce is going to butt heads with whatever norms or values or beliefs you have in place. And at this point, let's stop, and when we come back, we'll talk about how to develop a strong culture.